Aliens learned the hard way. Never make a human grandparent get up part. The smell of cookies filled Eleanor Mason's kitchen on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. Eleanor, a woman of 68 years with silver hair tied in a neat bun, hummed as she mixed the dough. Her hands, marked with age spots but still strong, worked quickly. She made these special cookies every month when her 5 grandchildren came to visit. They would arrive tomorrow, and everything needed to be perfect. 2 cups of flour, she counted out loud, a habit from her 40 years as a nurse. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Outside, dark clouds suddenly appeared in the clear sky. Eleanor glanced through the window, surprised by the change in weather. The local news had not mentioned rain today. She shrugged and went back to her baking. The lights in the kitchen flickered once, twice, and then went out. Eleanor frowned and put down her mixing bowl. Power cuts were rare in this area. She walked toward the kitchen drawer where she kept candles and matches. Before she reached the drawer, the lights came back on with a strange blue color. The blue light grew brighter until it hurt her eyes. The floor began to shake under her feet. Cups rattled in the cabinets. The cookie dough fell to the floor. Earthquake? Eleanor wondered, grabbing the edge of the counter for support. Then she felt it, a strange pulling sensation. Her feet lifted off the ground. Eleanor gasped as she floated upward. Cookie dough still stuck to her fingers. She tried to grab something, anything, but she was already near the ceiling. "What on earth?" she said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. The ceiling seemed to turn to mist as she passed through it. Eleanor saw her house growing smaller below her. She looked up and saw a huge metal disc hanging in the sky. The blue light came from this disc, pulling her upward like a magnet picks up a nail. Her last thought before everything went black was, "The grandchildren are coming tomorrow and I haven't finished their cookies." 3 blocks away, Bill Mason walked his usual route through the neighborhood. At 70 years old, Bill's knees hurt with each step, but his doctor said walking was good for him. The former construction foreman had worked with his hands all his life, building things that would last. His body showed the wear of that hard work, but his mind remained sharp. Bill looked up when an unusual shadow passed over him. His mouth fell open at what he saw. A giant disc, larger than a football field, hung silently over the neighborhood. It was made of some dark metal that reflected no light. Blue beams shot down from its center, one of them pointing directly at Eleanor. Bill shouted. His bad knees forgotten, Bill began to run toward their home. The 3 blocks felt like miles. By the time he reached their street, the blue beams were gone. The giant disc moved upward with incredible speed and vanished into the clouds. Bill crashed through the front door, calling his wife's name. The house answered with silence. In the kitchen, he found signs of interrupted baking, flour on the counter, a mixing bowl on the floor, cookie dough scattered around. The oven was still warm. But no Eleanor. No, Bill said, his hands shaking as he pulled out his phone. This can't be happening. He called their son Alan first. "Dad, what's wrong?" Alan answered. "They took her," Bill said, his voice breaking. "They took your mother." "What? Who took Mom?" "The spaceship," Bill said. He knew how it sounded. "A giant disc in the sky. I saw it with my own eyes, Alan. It was hovering over our house. By the time I got here, your mother was gone." The silence on the other end of the line told Bill what his son was thinking. "I'm not crazy," Bill insisted. "Come see for yourself. The cookies she was making for the kids are still here, half finished. You know your mother would never leave those unfinished." That, at least, was true. In 45 years of marriage, Eleanor had never once failed to complete what she started, especially when it involved the grandchildren. Within an hour, their 4 adult children had gathered at the house. The police had come and gone, taking a missing person report but looking doubtful when Bill mentioned the spaceship. "Dad, are you absolutely sure that's what you saw?" Alan asked as gently as he could. Bill's face turned red with anger. "I know what I saw. Your mother's been taken, and I'm going to get her back before the grandchildren arrive tomorrow." Meanwhile, in a place Eleanor couldn't identify, she slowly opened her eyes. The room was bright white and smelled like a hospital. She tried to move her arms but found them held down by something she couldn't see. "Subject is awake," said a voice unlike any Eleanor had heard before. It was high and musical, like wind chimes in a breeze. Eleanor turned her head toward the sound. She blinked several times, sure that her eyes were playing tricks on her. 3 creatures stood watching her from behind a clear wall. They were tall and thin with gray skin that seemed to shimmer. Their heads were too large for their bodies with huge black eyes that never blinked. "What am I doing here?" Eleanor asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Decades of nursing had taught her to stay calm in strange situations. The creatures looked at each other. One stepped closer to the clear wall. "You are Subject 7249E, it said in that chiming voice. "You will help us understand humans." Eleanor frowned. "My name is Eleanor Mason, not a number, and I need to go home. My grandchildren are visiting tomorrow and I have cookies to finish." The creatures seemed confused by her response. They made sounds to each other that Eleanor couldn't understand. "Your designation is now Subject 7249E, the creature repeated. "You will comply with our tests." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. In her years as a nurse, she had dealt with difficult doctors, scared patients, and every emergency imaginable. This might be the strangest situation yet, but she refused to be treated like a number. "Listen carefully," she said. "I am Eleanor Mason. I have 5 grandchildren who expect cookies tomorrow. Either send me home now or you'll learn why it's a terrible mistake to make a grandmother miss her family's visit." The aliens stared at her with those unblinking black eyes. They clearly hadn't expected this response from what they thought was a weak old human. They were about to learn just how wrong they were, and somewhere far below, Bill Mason was already working on a way to find his wife and bring her home, no matter what it took. Aliens learned the hard way. Never make a human grandparent get up part. 2. Eleanor spent her first night as a captive studying her surroundings. The room was small and bare with walls that glowed softly. There was no bed, just a flat platform that adjusted to her body when she lay on it. No doors were visible, yet the gray creatures came and went through walls that seemed to melt away for them. Eleanor had been a nurse for 40 years before she retired. She had worked in emergency rooms and seen many strange things. This was certainly the strangest, but her training helped her stay calm. Panic never solved problems. First, learn what you can. Second, make a plan, she whispered to herself. She noticed cameras, or what looked like cameras, in each corner of the room. Eleanor waved at one of them. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge," she said clearly. "And I'd like some water, please." Minutes later, a section of wall disappeared. One of the tall gray creatures entered, holding something like a clear ball filled with liquid. It approached Eleanor cautiously. "Hydration for Subject 7249E, it said in that strange musical voice. Eleanor took the ball. After watching how the creature held it, she pressed her thumb against a spot on the surface. The ball opened at the top, allowing her to drink. "Thank you," she said. "And my name is Eleanor, not a number." The creature tilted its large head. "Why do you resist your designation? Numbers are efficient." "Names have meaning," Eleanor explained. "My name connects me to my family, my history. It's part of who I am." The creature seemed to consider this. "I am called Researcher Zelix," it finally said. Eleanor smiled. "Nice to meet you, Zelix. Now when can I go home? My grandchildren are visiting and they'll be very upset if I'm not there." "You cannot leave," Zelix said. "Our research is important." "What research?" Eleanor asked. "Why take me? Humans are interesting, especially older humans." Zelix moved closer. "Your species weakens with age yet continues to function in society. We wish to understand how and why." Eleanor laughed. "You think we're weak because we're old?" "Your bodies show clear signs of deterioration," Zelix noted. "Reduced muscle mass, wrinkled skin, gray hair. There's more to strength than muscles," Eleanor said. "Experience, knowledge, patience. These grow stronger with time." Before Zelix could respond, the wall opened again. 2 more creatures entered, these wearing different markings on their gray skin. Research Chief Vox requires immediate testing of the human subject, one announced. Zelix stepped back as the 2 newcomers approached Eleanor with a device that looked like a large needle. This will extract cerebral fluid for analysis, one stated flatly. Eleanor stood up straight, all 5 feet 4 inches of her. No, it will not. The creatures paused, clearly not expecting refusal. Subject will comply, the taller one insisted. Subject will not, Eleanor countered. I was a nurse for 40 years. That device is not properly sterilized for human use, and I see no evidence you've done basic compatibility testing. The risk of infection or adverse reaction is too great. The creatures looked at each other, their large eyes blinking rarely. Subject displays unexpected knowledge, one said. Subject displays unexpected resistance, added the other. Eleanor crossed her arms. If you want cooperation, we need to establish some ground rules. First, my name is Eleanor Mason. Second, no invasive procedures without my consent. Third, I need to contact my husband to let him know I'm okay. Back on Earth, Bill Mason had not slept. Their children had tried to make him rest, but he refused. His wife was missing, taken by something not of this world, and nobody seemed to believe him. After the police left, Bill went to his neighbor's house. Gus Porter was 75 years old and had worked for NASA as an electrical engineer before, retiring. If anyone would believe Bill's story, it would be Gus. Gus listened without interrupting as Bill described what he had seen. When Bill finished, Gus nodded slowly. I've always said we can't be alone in the universe, Gus said. Come with me. In his garage, Gus showed Bill a ham radio setup surrounded by additional equipment Bill didn't recognize. Been a hobby of mine. For years, Gus explained. Listening to the stars. Most people think I'm crazy. I don't think you're crazy, Bill said. Can this help us find Eleanor? Gus adjusted some dials on his equipment. If your visitors are using any kind of radio, waves for communication, we might pick something up. It's a long shot, but it's better than doing nothing. Throughout the night, the 2 men sat in Gus's garage listening to static and strange noises from the radio. By morning, they had heard nothing useful. Bill's eyes were red from lack of sleep. The kids will be bringing the grandchildren over, soon, Bill said. How do I tell them their grandmother is missing? That she was taken by a flying saucer? Gus put a hand on Bill's shoulder. We'll find her, Bill. We just need... A sudden noise from the radio made them both jump. It wasn't static, it was a pattern repeating every few seconds. That's not normal, Gus said, adjusting dials quickly. That's not terrestrial. What does it mean? Bill asked, leaning forward. Gus shook his head. I don't know, but it's not random. Something intelligent is making that signal. On the alien ship, Eleanor had been moved to a larger room with 3 other humans. An elderly man with thick glasses introduced himself as Carl Graham, a retired science teacher. A woman with curly white hair was Dorothy Lopez, who had been taken from her retirement community in Florida. A tall, thin man with weathered skin was Fred Peterson, a farmer from Iowa. They took us because we're old, Carl explained. They think we're easy targets. Big mistake, Dorothy said with a smile. I raised 6 children during the hardest years of my life. These skinny gray fellows don't scare me. Fred nodded. Been farming for 50 years, fought drought, floods, and tornadoes. Not about to let some aliens push me around. Eleanor felt better knowing she wasn't alone. We need to work together, she said. Learn their routines, find their weaknesses. I've been watching the guards, Fred said quietly. They change every 6 hours. The ones on night shift are less attentive. The air vents, Dorothy added. They're larger in the corners of the rooms. I've been mapping them in my head, Carl smiled. I've been studying their technology. Some of it looks familiar, based on principles I taught for years. Eleanor was impressed. These weren't helpless elderly people. They were experienced, observant, and determined. My husband will be looking for me, Eleanor said. He's stubborn and clever. If there's a way to find us, he'll find it. Then we need to be ready, Fred said. Create a distraction when the time comes. Eleanor nodded. Let's make a plan. These aliens think they chose weak targets because we're old. They're about to learn how wrong they are. As they huddled together, sharing observations and ideas, the creatures watched them on monitors. The aliens didn't understand what they were seeing. In their world, the old were set aside, their usefulness ended. These humans were behaving differently, showing coordination and purpose. The specimens are displaying unusual behavior. Research, Chief Vox noted. Perhaps we should separate them. Or increase the testing schedule, another suggested, before they create problems. Vox considered this. Begin the tests tomorrow. Extract all the data we need quickly, then dispose of the specimens. What the aliens didn't understand was that on Earth, a grandfather with bad knees was already finding a way to reach them. And when it came to protecting family, human grandparents were the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Aliens learned the hard way. Never make a human grandparent get up part. 3 By the second day of her captivity, Eleanor had learned much about the aliens who called themselves the Xantari. They were scientists, explorers who traveled the stars looking for knowledge. They believed themselves to be superior to humans, especially elderly humans whom they saw as weak and near the end of their usefulness. Eleanor and her 3 fellow captives gathered in the common area where they were allowed to spend a few hours each day. They're planning something big tomorrow, Carl said quietly. I overheard 2 guards talking. They mentioned final tests and disposal procedure. Disposal? Dorothy's eyes widened. That doesn't sound good. It means we need to move faster, Eleanor said. Fred, what did you find out about the ship layout? Fred leaned in closer. The guard I fixed that broken device for was grateful. He showed me more of the ship than he was supposed to. There's a communication room 3 levels down, and a docking bay with smaller ships on level 5. Eleanor nodded. Carl, how's your project coming? Carl adjusted his glasses. Almost done. I've rewired the cleaning robot to respond to my commands instead of theirs. It can create a decent distraction when we need it. Good, Eleanor said. Dorothy? The air vents are our best path, Dorothy said. I've mapped them in my head. The main one in our sleeping area connects to a maintenance tunnel. It's a tight fit, but we can make it. Eleanor smiled at her team. Who would have thought that 4 grandparents would become rebels on an alien spaceship? But they each brought valuable skills. Carl's knowledge of science and electronics. Dorothy's sharp memory and attention to detail. Fred's practical mechanical skills. And Eleanor's leadership and medical expertise. We move tonight, Eleanor decided. During the guard change. But first I need to get into the medical lab. If they're planning to dispose of us, I want to know exactly how. Back on Earth, Bill and Gus had made progress. The strange signal they detected had grown stronger. Gus had connected his equipment to his computer, running programs that tried to make sense of the pattern. It's definitely artificial, Gus said, pointing to patterns on his screen. And it's circling Earth in orbit. Whatever sent your wife's cookies flying is still up there. Bill paced the room, his bad knees protesting with each step. But how? Do we reach it? How do we get Eleanor back? The door to Gus's garage opened and Bill's son Alan stepped in with Alan's wife Susan. Dad, the kids are at our house, Alan said gently. They're asking for you and Mom. What should we tell them? Bill looked at his son with tired eyes. Tell them the truth. Their grandmother was taken by aliens and we're going to get her back. Alan sighed. Dad, I know you believe that, but it's not about believing, Gus interrupted, waving Alan over to his computer. Look at this. Something is in orbit around Earth right now, sending signals unlike anything in our satellite network. Susan moved closer to the screen. What is that? That, Gus said proudly, is proof Bill isn't crazy. Alan studied the screen, his face changing from doubt to wonder. So Mom really was taken, Bill finished. And now we need to figure out how to get her back before whoever took her decides to leave. Eleanor moved carefully through the dim corridors of the ship. She had convinced researcher Zelix to let her help in the medical lab, claiming that her nursing experience could be valuable to their research. The Xantari medical lab was both familiar and alien. Some tools reminded her of human medical equipment, while others were completely strange. Eleanor pretended to organize samples while secretly reading the notes on a nearby screen. What she saw made her blood run cold. The notes detailed the final extraction procedure scheduled for the next day. The Xantari planned to remove and preserve the humans' brains while disposing of their bodies. They believed this would allow them to study human knowledge and experience without having to care for the deteriorating biological vessels. Eleanor forced herself to remain calm. She continued working, committing everything she saw to memory. When Zelix returned to escort her back to the holding area, Eleanor smiled as if nothing was wrong. "Thank you for allowing me to help," she said. "I'd be happy to continue tomorrow." "That will not be necessary," Zelix replied. "Tomorrow's procedures are already prepared." As soon as Eleanor returned to the others, she shared what she had discovered. "They want our brains?" Fred whispered, horrified. "Just our knowledge and experience," Eleanor explained. "They don't understand that these things aren't separate from who we are." "Then we definitely need to leave tonight," Carl said firmly. Dorothy nodded. "I've been saving food from our meals. Not much, but enough for a day or two if we need it." "I have another piece of news," Eleanor added. "I saw a star map in the lab. We're in orbit around Earth. Home is right below us." This gave them all hope. They weren't in some distant part of the galaxy. They just needed to find a way to contact Earth or to escape in one of the smaller ships Fred had seen. As night approached, the four elderly humans prepared. Dorothy had noticed that the Xantari needed less light to see than humans, so the ship's lighting dimmed during what they considered night hours. This would give the humans an advantage. They had asked for and received small personal lights that the Xantari thought were for comfort. At exactly midnight by Earth time, the guard change began. Carl activated his reprogrammed cleaning robot, sending it on a path through the main corridor. The robot began spraying cleaning fluid in all directions, creating confusion among the guards. "Now," Eleanor whispered. Dorothy led them to the air vent she had identified. Fred used a tool he had hidden to remove the cover. One by one, they squeezed into the vent. No easy task for people their age, but determination overcame discomfort. "My arthritis is going to hate me tomorrow," Dorothy muttered as she crawled through the narrow space. "If we succeed, you can complain about your arthritis on Earth," Eleanor replied from behind her. They followed Dorothy's memorized map through the ventilation system, moving as quietly as possible. After what seemed like hours, they reached the maintenance tunnel Fred had described. "The communication room should be just ahead," Fred whispered as they climbed out of the vent. Carl suddenly held up his hand, signaling them to stop. Voices approached, Xantari guards likely responding to the chaos caused by the cleaning robot. The four humans pressed themselves against the wall in a dark corner, hardly daring to breathe. The guards passed by, just a few feet away, without noticing them. "That was close," Carl whispered once the guards were gone. Eleanor nodded. "Let's hurry. It won't take them long to realize we're missing." They reached the communication room and found it empty. The guards had been pulled away to deal with the distraction. Carl sat at what appeared to be the main control panel. "I hope alien technology isn't too different from what I'm used to," he muttered, studying the unfamiliar symbols. On Earth, Gus Porter's radio equipment suddenly came to life. The signal they had been tracking changed, becoming stronger and more focused. "Something's happening," Gus said, adjusting dials. Bill leaned forward, hope rising in his chest. Then, through the static, came a voice he would recognize anywhere. "Bill? Bill Mason, can you hear me? This is Eleanor. Aliens learned the hard way. Never make a human grandparent get up part." "Eleanor, is that really you?" Bill's voice cracked with emotion as it came through the strange alien device. In the communication room of the Xantari ship, Eleanor pressed her hands against the control panel, tears in her eyes. "Yes, Bill, it's me. I don't have much time. I'm on an alien ship with 3 other people. They took us because we're old." "Are you hurt?" Bill asked. "No, but they plan to remove our brains tomorrow. Eleanor said quickly. We've escaped our holding area, but we need help. Carl leaned toward the communication device. Sir, this is Carl Graham. I'm with your wife. We think we're in orbit around Earth. Is there any way you can help us get home? On Earth, Bill looked at Gus with wide eyes. Gus was already typing frantically on his computer. We're tracking your signal, Gus said into the microphone. I'm Gus Porter, former NASA engineer. If you can get to one of their smaller ships, I might be able to help you pilot it home. Fred joined the conversation. I've seen their shuttle bay, but we'd need to get past the guards. And we'll need to know how to fly one of those things, Dorothy added. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the Zantari ship. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside the communication room. They know we're gone, Eleanor said urgently. Bill, we have to move now. Keep this channel open. I will, Bill promised. I'm calling for help too. The kids are here. Alan is contacting his friend at the Air Force Base. Eleanor smiled despite the danger. Her family was working together as always. We need to reach the shuttle bay, Eleanor told her companions as they hurried from the communication room. 5 levels down, Fred said. The 4 elderly humans moved as quickly as their bodies allowed, using Dorothy's memorized map of the air vents and maintenance tunnels to avoid the main corridors where guards were searching for them. Carl's reprogrammed cleaning robot had done more than create a distraction. It was now moving through the ship on a new mission, to disable the security systems on their path to the shuttle bay. Carl controlled it remotely using a small device he had built from parts he collected during their captivity. My grandson would love this, Carl muttered as he worked the controls. Always said I should teach him more about electronics. When we get home, you can tell him all about how you hacked an alien spaceship, Dorothy said with a smile. They reached a service elevator that Fred had discovered during his exploration. It would take them directly to the shuttle bay level, but using it would alert the guards to their location. We don't have much choice, Eleanor decided. We can't climb down 5 levels at our age. They entered the elevator, and Fred pressed the controls. As the elevator moved downward, they could hear the alarms growing louder. Be ready to run, Eleanor warned as the elevator slowed. When the doors opened, they faced 2 surprised Zantari guards. Before the aliens could react, Fred threw the tool bag he had carried with him, hitting one guard in the head. Carl pressed a button on his remote device, and the cleaning robot, which had arrived ahead of them, sprayed cleaning fluid at the other guard's large eyes. The humans rushed past the confused guards and ran, as much as their elderly legs allowed, toward the shuttle bay. Behind them, they could hear more guards approaching. On Earth, Bill, Gus, and Alan had been joined by military personnel. Alan's Air Force friend had brought a team, and they had set up equipment around Gus's garage. We're tracking the ship, a young lieutenant told them. It's in low Earth orbit, approximately 250 miles up. Can you help them? Bill asked anxiously. The lieutenant looked uncomfortable. Sir, officially we're not equipped to deal with extraterrestrial situations. Unofficially, Bill pressed. Unofficially, we're very interested in their technology. If your wife and her friends can bring one of their craft down safely, we'll do everything we can to ensure they land without incident. In the shuttle bay of the Zantari ship, Eleanor and her companions faced a new challenge. 3 small shuttlecraft sat in the large room ready for use, but Zantari guards were closing in from all sides. Which one? Dorothy asked, looking at the alien vessels. Fred pointed to the smallest one. That one looks simplest. Fewer controls to figure out. They rushed to the shuttle. Carl worked on the door mechanism while the others watched for guards. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a cockpit with strange-looking seats and a control panel covered in symbols. Everyone in, Eleanor ordered. As they climbed aboard, the main doors to the shuttle bay opened. Research Chief Vox entered, followed by a dozen guards. Stop the human subjects, Vox commanded. They are valuable research specimens. Fred pulled the shuttle door closed just as the guards reached them. Carl examined the control panel frantically. I have no idea how to start this thing, he admitted. Eleanor activated the communication device they had brought with them. Gus, we're in one of their shuttles, but we don't know how to fly it. Gus's voice came through clearly. Look for anything that resembles a navigation system. There should be a display showing the ship's position relative to Earth. Dorothy pointed to a screen showing a blue planet, clearly Earth, and their position above it. Found it, Eleanor reported. Now find the main power controls, Gus instructed. In most spacecraft, those would be central and prominently marked. Carl pointed to a large red symbol. This looks important. Outside, the guards were attempting to open the shuttle door. They could hear pounding and strange alien voices shouting orders. We're running out of time, Fred warned. Carl pressed the red symbol. Nothing happened. Try holding it longer, Dorothy suggested. Carl pressed and held. Suddenly, the shuttle hummed to life. Lights flickered on throughout the cockpit, and the control panel glowed. It's working, Eleanor reported to Gus. Good, Gus replied. Now look for directional controls, something that would steer the craft. Fred pointed to what looked like a joystick. This reminds me of the controls on my tractor. Outside, the guards had brought equipment to force the door open. They could see Vox directing them through a small window in the shuttle. We need to leave now, Eleanor said urgently. Fred grabbed the joystick. Here goes nothing. He pushed it forward. The shuttle lurched, then began to move. The guards scattered as the small craft floated across the shuttle bay toward the large doors that led to open space. The bay doors are closed. Carl pointed out, We can't get out. At that moment, an alarm different from the others began to sound. The large bay doors started to open automatically, an emergency protocol when a powered shuttle was in motion. They've opened for us, Dorothy cried. That, or we triggered an emergency system, Carl said. Either way, it works for us. Fred guided the shuttle toward the opening doors. Beyond them, they could see the blackness of space and the beautiful blue sphere of Earth below. We're coming home, Bill, Eleanor said into the communication device. Now we just need to figure out how to land this thing. Aliens learned the hard way. Never make a human grandparent get up part. The small alien shuttle moved away from the main ship, floating in the emptiness of space. Inside, 4 elderly humans looked out at the blue planet below them with a mixture of hope and fear. It's so beautiful, Dorothy whispered, pressing her hand against the window. And we need to get back to it, Eleanor reminded them. Fred, how are the controls responding? Fred gripped the joystick with his weathered hands. Like driving a tractor, through mud, but I'm getting the feel of it. The communication device crackled with Gus's voice. Can you hear me? Your signal is getting weaker. We hear you, Eleanor replied. We're clear of the main ship, but we don't know how to set a course for Earth. The navigation system should have preset landing coordinates, Gus explained. Look for something that shows different locations or paths. Carl studied the control panel. His knowledge of science helped him understand some of the symbols. I think I found it, he said, pointing to a display showing several lines connecting their position to Earth. Before they could select a path, a new alarm sounded. On a screen behind them, they could see the main Xantari ship turning toward them. They're coming after us, Fred warned. Select any landing path, Eleanor urged Carl. We need to move now. Carl pressed a symbol that seemed to indicate the shortest path to Earth. The shuttle's engines hummed louder, and they felt a push as the craft accelerated toward the planet. We've set a course, Eleanor told Gus. But the main ship is following. We're tracking both vessels, Gus replied. The military is involved now. They're clearing airspace for your potential landing site. On Earth, Bill paced anxiously as military personnel worked around him. Trucks and equipment had arrived at Gus's house, transforming the quiet neighborhood into a command center. Bill's children and their families waited nearby, keeping the grandchildren distracted with games and stories. How long until they land? Bill asked the lieutenant. At their current speed, about 20 minutes, the officer replied. We're still trying to determine exactly where. The trajectory suggests somewhere in the state park about 30 miles from here. I need to be there, Bill insisted. The lieutenant nodded. A helicopter is on its way. You can ride with us, sir. In the shuttle, the 4 escapees watched with growing concern as the main Xantari ship gained on them. "Can this thing go any faster?" Dorothy asked. Fred pushed the controls to their limit. "I'm giving it all it's got, but that big ship is more powerful." The shuttle began to shake as they entered Earth's atmosphere. Red light filled the cockpit as heat built up around the craft. "Is this normal?" Eleanor asked into the communication device. "Yes," Gus assured them. "You're experiencing re-entry. The shuttle should have heat shields. Just hold your course." The shaking grew worse. Carl's glasses fell off his face and Dorothy grabbed his arm to steady herself. Fred gripped the controls with white knuckles, fighting to keep the craft stable. "We're coming in too steep," he shouted over the noise. "Try pulling back on the controls," Gus suggested. "Ease your descent." Fred pulled back on the joystick. The shuttle's nose lifted slightly, and the shaking lessened. Behind them, the main Xantari ship was also entering the atmosphere, its much-eyed, larger size creating a spectacular light show visible from the ground below. "People are going to notice this," Carl said. "So much for keeping aliens a secret." "I think that ship is the least of our problems right now," Eleanor replied. "We still need to land safely." The shuttle broke through the clouds. Below them, they could see green forests and a large clearing where military vehicles were gathering. "See the landing site," Fred announced. "But I don't know how to stop this thing." "Look for reverse thrusters," Gus instructed, "or a landing system activation button." Dorothy pointed to a green symbol near the bottom of the control panel. "Try this one. Green usually means go, or in this case, stop." Fred pressed the symbol. The shuttle slowed dramatically as hidden thrusters fired from beneath it. The sudden deceleration pushed them all forward in their seats. "It's working," Carl exclaimed. The shuttle descended toward the clearing, still moving faster than seemed safe. Fred fought with the controls, trying to level their approach. "Brace yourselves," he warned. "This might be rough." On the ground, Bill watched from the open door of a helicopter as two fiery objects descended from the sky. The smaller one, the shuttle carrying Eleanor, was moving toward the designated landing area. The larger Xantari ship appeared to be having trouble controlling its descent. "That big one's coming down too fast," the pilot commented. "And it's off course." As they watched, the main ship veered away from the clearing, heading toward the uninhabited forest several miles away. It disappeared behind the trees, and seconds later a bright flash illuminated the sky, followed by a deep rumbling sound. "The alien ship has crashed," the lieutenant reported. "Teams are being dispatched to secure the site." But Bill's attention remained fixed on the small shuttle that carried his wife. It was hovering above the clearing now, wobbling slightly as if the pilot was struggling to control it. "Come on, Eleanor," he whispered. "You can do this." The shuttle touched down hard, bouncing once before settling on the ground. Military personnel rushed toward it, but Bill was faster despite his bad knees. He reached the shuttle just as its door began to open. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her white hair disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, but her eyes bright and alert. When she saw Bill, her face broke into a wide smile. "You're late," she said. Bill laughed through his tears. "You're the one who decided to take a spaceship ride." He helped her down from the shuttle, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear again. Behind her came Fred, Carl, and Dorothy, all looking tired but triumphant. "The grandkids are waiting," Bill told Eleanor. "They've been asking for their cookies." Eleanor laughed. "Well, I have a good excuse for the delay. Not every grandmother can say she escaped from aliens." As military teams secured the shuttle and debriefed the four elderly heroes, news of the incident spread quickly. By evening, the story of four grandparents who outsmarted an advanced alien species was making headlines around the world. The next day, Eleanor's grandchildren gathered around her in the kitchen as she finally finished baking the cookies she had started before her abduction. "Did you really fly a spaceship, Grandma?" her youngest grandson asked with wide eyes. "I did," Eleanor replied, handing him a warm cookie. "And do you know what the aliens learned?" "What?" all the children asked together. "Never make a grandparent get up when they have important things to do," Eleanor said with a wink. "We may be old, but that just means we've had a lot of practice solving problems and not giving up." Bill watched from the doorway, his heart full as he saw his family together again. The aliens had chosen their targets poorly. If they had wanted easy test subjects, they should have known better than to pick grandparents who had already faced the challenges of raising children, working hard jobs, and overcoming life's many obstacles. Some lessons, it seemed, had to be learned the hard way, even for advanced aliens from across the stars.